Hello, my name is Chandler Montree. I chose to do my digital presentation on how different cultures deal with mental health issues. Why did I choose this topic? I chose this topic because I'm a psych major at the University of Toledo, and so it's obviously a very important topic to me. I also think it's important to understand how different areas of the world and different cultures and religions handle mental health issues. And also, people's cultures, value, and religions play a huge role on mental health issues and how mental health is handled. And I also think it's an important topic to talk about right now, just because of how the world is at the moment and everything going on with COVID, I think it's going to be, mental health is more important now than ever, just because when this is all over, if it is all over, it's definitely something people will be seeking more. How does culture impact mental health? Willingness to speak, the stigma behind mental health, origins and belief on mental health, and how mental health is treated or not treated and talked about culture by culture. I've also included this little chart here that just kind of shows the influences that culture, race, and ethnicity have on mental health, just like family support, willingness, stigmas like I already had mentioned, but yep. Cultural bound syndromes. I actually thought this was really interesting. Culture bound syndromes are psychological disorders that are found in specific cultures and environments. They're also referred to as culture-specific disorders, and I just think this is a really interesting aspect because when you think of mental disorders and illnesses, you think of, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, but you don't think about how different areas of the world and different cultures and just environments can affect and cause different mental illnesses. And so if you want to just pause and read some of these, it's actually very interesting. Okay, and now I'm just going to go into discussing how different cultures and just areas around the world deal with mental health. Okay, so for Hispanics, with Hispanic culture and mental health, it's very group-oriented, and they tend to go to family, extended family, and churches when they're in need of mental and emotional support or help. The ideas on speaking to a professional for mental health vary, but it's, for the most part, it's very stigmatized. So, like I said, people are more likely to go to family or churches to seek out help. And they also have a very collectivist mentality when it comes to dealing with mental health and talking about it. Native Americans and mental health. The communication methods on mental health do vary. But they're more likely to view mental diagnosis as a cause from one's own personal self. So, maybe I'm depressed because I did this, not I'm depressed, Basically just like that. They believe that mental illnesses they have come from within themselves and they cause them, when in other cultures they believe, there's chemical imbalances in the brain or, and they're also less likely to get treatment from an outside source and are more focused on traditional medicine or ritual healing, spiritual healing, music. They're way more likely to get help or treatment in that sort of way rather than going to see a doctor and put on medication. Asian cultures. The Asian culture is very stigmatized when it comes to mental health. So even when suggesting that you may want to go get some professional help when it comes to mental illnesses or disorders, it can often even be seen as a dishonor to the family, which is not really good. So that's a big reason why the Asian culture doesn't seek that. And there's also a lot of statistics that show that Asians have a very high suicide rate, and I think that could have a lot to do with it. I'm sure there's other things that tie into that as well, though. In Asian belief systems, it's very common to believe that mental health disorders are caused by lack of caring for emotions or even come from evil spirits from within. So, yep. And then also in the Buddhist religion, which is a very common Asian religion, it believes that problems that you have in today's life come from one's past life. So maybe you had a lot of terrible things happen to you, so you're always stressed out, or you have PTSD because of things that happened in your past life, if that makes sense. So that's more of an older belief system, even in the Buddhist religion. So a lot of like elder people of the Asian culture believe that. It's more so now with all the research and everything happening. It's not as believed, but it is. Also, many Asian languages do not contain direct words to describe mental illness. So often they'll describe those psychological issues as physical symptoms. So maybe you're really, really stressed out and you have anxiety, so you say your stomach hurts, or you're really, really sad and you're crying. Like, I don't know. Maybe not that direct, but like maybe you have a headache, for example. But it's actually caused by a mental disorder, but you don't really know how to describe it because it's not in your language, so it's more of physical symptoms you show. And of course, the American cultures in mental health. Americans are the most likely to seek mental help. They're also very likely to not be able to access it due to the financial burdens that it causes in the U.S. because we have to pay for, health care, like a lot of other countries don't have to, so it's more of a benefit to the higher income cultures who don't have to pay for health care, and stuff like that. So although it's the most talked about and we have a lot of access to it, a lot of people aren't just able to get it for financial reasons and many other ones. We're also most open to talking verbally about what's bothering us in our lives. So, within other countries, they may, kind of feel like they have to hide their emotions for reasons like I discussed with families or the stigmas behind it, whereas Americans, we're very, very lucky because it's something that we're able to talk about and seek help with and go to people, So, yeah. How does this relate to the class? I believe this issue is greatly related to the topics we have discussed in intercultural communications class for many reasons. The first one being the way mental health issues are just handled depending on the culture, religions, and values, and how we communicate the topics and the issues and what we're feeling from culture to culture. People who come from high context cultures use various ways to describe their emotional state, whereas us in the U.S., where we come from a low context culture, so we do more verbal talking about why we're upset and why we're feeling the way that we do. I think that's why we're more willing to seek help from outside sources, because we're more willing to talk about it and there's not as much stigma behind it. And we can also revert this back to discussions in the book, for example, Chapter 7, where we discussed language and how the Asian culture is not able to communicate because their language does not hold direct words that describe mental illnesses. So yeah, there's that. And then we can also relate this back to environmental context when talking about cultural bound syndrome, psychological culture bound syndrome, how different environments can impact the way we're feeling or cause us to have different mental illnesses. So yeah, I think this relates to the class in many ways than just that, but those are just a couple, main things that were discussed in the class. But yeah. And then these are my sources.